Hello, hello, hello. Hope everybody is doing well on today. My name is Shandra Haynes Gunter, and I am doing a presentation for one of my master's degree programs, Counseling 6324, Substance Abuse and Addictive Disorders. Purpose of this interview is to interview someone who has actually dealt with a substance abuse addiction. Their real name has been kept confidential, and we're going to just talk about some of the root causes, what made them want to um, go after their drug of choice, some of their um, turning points, spiritual beliefs, and ultimately what they would all overall say to someone else today that is dealing with a substance abuse issue. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right in. So this anonymous individual's drug of choice was crack cocaine. That's defined as a rock, a freebase, a form of a stimulant cocaine that can be smoked, and it offers a short, intense high. The drug rapidly increased during the late 80s and early 90s, and it was known during that time as the crack epidemic. So I asked this anonymous individual, was there ever interactions with another drug in addition to the crack cocaine that they experimented with? And they said absolutely. They experimented with marijuana and alcohol as well as crack cocaine. And I asked them kind of what was the effects of combining the two, and they said that it um, when the crack was combined with the marijuana and the alcohol, it essentially allowed them to calm down. It allowed them to, I guess, mellow out, where otherwise they would just be on a thousand in terms of their energy and things of that nature. So they combine those drugs almost all the time to help kind of have a midline in terms of their intensity of being high. So we asked why was the crack cocaine the preferred drug, and they said when they first started, um, it helped them stay up. They were using it by association, partying, hanging out with certain people. It allowed them to be open and free. They were talkative. They was able to laugh. And something that was very interesting that they said was that it actually became a job. And I said, why was it a job to do crack cocaine? And they said, because the first thing that they ever thought of every morning was what I need to do to get high. Now, this person was not a hustler or anything like that. They didn't steal or anything. So they had to get up and go to work every day so that they can make sure that they would have their drug of choice. Very interesting. So I asked about their spiritual beliefs, and they said they didn't have any at all. They said they never prayed. They really just didn't think that God was with them. And they said, if God was with them, why would they be allowed to go through the things they went through? Right. Then I asked the individual, what were some of their turning points? And what was like their recovery process like? And so they said they went to a lot of NA meetings, Narcotics Anonymous. Some they went by choice, and some they went with other people. This is the part that was also a little interesting. They said that they actually were going to some of the NA meetings to connect with other addicts, to see what other addicts were in their area and how they got their drug of choice, which is crazy because you're going for technically one reason to have a support group, support network, all those things, but ultimately people were going to hook up with other addicts. But then one of the turning points, which I also thought was pretty profound, was she had mentioned she finally had just got really, really tired, and she remembers it like the back of her hand. It was one night. Um, Almost 38 years ago, and it was at midnight. She remembers the time, and she just got really tired. And she said that she ended up going to her daughter's friend's house to escape kind of the environment she was in. And she said that was the turning point for her because she was just sick and tired of being sick and tired. So that was the initial turning point for her. Now, one of the authors, Morel, who wrote Radicalizing Recovery, Addiction, Spirituality, and Politics, says the recognition of humankind's fundamental relatedness motivates progressive political activity. He said people suffer individually and collectively as they experience personal separation and oppression, both of which relate to addictive behavior. So essentially, I wanted to read that because when this individual had that turning point in their life, it only worked when they separated themselves from out of the environment, the relatedness, the similarities that they were accustomed to. Um, so I like that part that Morel mentioned. So I asked this individual what were some of their coping mechanisms for sobriety. Now, gratefully, this individual's been sober for 21 plus years, right? We want to clap that up. That's a beautiful thing. That's a blessing. Some people don't never recover, right? And so I asked kind of what were the things that help you reach sobriety, and they talked a lot about what Morel touched on: changing their environment. They wanted to better themselves for their children, their grandchildren. They wanted to be clean. They were tired, running things, just sick and tired of the way that they were living. And I also asked what was one of the hardest part of their sobriety, and they said coming out of familiar places. So all they ever knew was the familiar association of everybody who kind of did the same things in the same environment. But the hardest part of sobriety for them was coming out of those familiar environments. And they said they were very weak in those familiar environments because it was so much peer pressure. Now, May, one of the authors of Addiction and Grace, says impulses have a subtle but exceedingly important effect upon the person's feelings of success. The joyful sense of I'm free, it's changed into I can handle it for a while. I can handle it means the person feels they can fight off any impulses to engage in addictive behaviors. Before long, however, the I can handle it means they actually think they can engage in addictive behaviors without becoming enslaved to it again. So, really, I wanted to read that because as this individual was talking about their coping mechanisms, they talked about being extrapolated from out of the environments that they were accustomed to, those familiar places, but they were saying they were tired but they can also be okay with familiarizing themselves in those same environments when in fact, according to May, right, they had to come out of those environments in order to get their self mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually into their place of starting their sobriety, right? And so I asked also what were some supports or networks that were helpful for them during their walk to sobriety, and they said their children, and then eventually they started to build their faith with God. um, and so I also asked this anonymous individual, what would you say to someone struggling with a similar crack cocaine addiction? And they said they would say, and I quote, you got to get support, have faith in God. He brought me out of the dark into the marvelous light. Believe you can overcome it. They said when they were down, they were just done and they were tired of being done. And then they also said that they would tell a person, be mindful. As you drop one addiction, you may pick up another one. And then this individual mentioned how they ended up picking up a shopping addiction, which is not too bad. But again, you're spending a lot of money. But all things considered, that's not as bad as spending a lot of money doing something that's very, very harmful to your body. So then I also asked the individual, what are your thoughts today of yourself now that you're 20 plus years sober? And they said they are now reliable. They do not lie or lie. People can trust them. They say they have good relationships now with family and friends. They have a humongous relationship with the Lord. Their faith has increased tremendously. And they said they are good where they are at in their life right now. They are happy and they are blessed. All praises to God. And so I also asked one last question. So, what do you wish people understood about addictions? And they said, and I quote, don't think that you can do this alone, meaning come away from the addiction. And they said, don't ever pick it up because once you pick it up, you can't always have the strength and the discipline to put it down. I love that. So my reflection as a future counselor, as it relates to working with people with addictions, I would be very mindful to not judge. I would be very mindful to allow them to tell me through their own inner strength what they need in order to walk towards that journey of sobriety. And I would be the one that would help them find their inner faith again. The Bible talks about greater is he that's within than he that's in the world. So I would help them discover kind of that greater within again so that they can walk that walk of sobriety. And some of the takeaways from me was just being unbiased, not judgmental, be mindful of the whys in terms of why people do things and why someone starts, even initially wanting to be a person who's addicted to something, right? And then I would also have a takeaway of encouraging someone to have certain coping mechanisms in place so that they do not relapse again. And then also, I think another takeaway would just have check ins, have somebody or something, whether it's your face, a family member, or friend that you can check in with periodically so that you have support in place so that you do not have to revert backwards. I think it's super important to know that all we need is within us, but also it's important to have somebody that we can call on, somebody that we can run to that's not familiar, the same familiarity of where we had those addictive measures and those addictive natures, and we won't be drawn back into that lifestyle. So, yeah, I'm super grateful to walk into this calling of being a Christian clinical mental health counselor, and I hope you all enjoyed this interview today, and I hope you have a blessed day. Thank you.